Just a moment. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. As you're coming in to today's event, we want to thank you for investing some of your time learning with us this afternoon. And I'm watching people come in slowly. So, welcome to this webinar event with Judith Hurwitz and Dan Kirsch. We'll be getting started in just a few moments. As you're coming in today, I hope you'll take a moment to find the chat. We would love to communicate and chat with you throughout today's event. And what I would encourage you to do is use the drop-down menu to select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your comments throughout today's event. As you're coming in today, we would love to have you give a shout out to where you're calling in from today. I am calling in from my home in Michigan. I know Judith and Dan in Newton, Massachusetts. Yes.
Cambridge here.
Cambridge, okay. Also, often people will attend these webinars as representatives of their workplaces and part of their professional development. So if you'd like to take a moment to tell us what organization you're connected to, we'd love to give your organization a shout out. So welcome in Morocco. Wow. Welcome in Potomac, Maryland, and in Columbia, South Carolina, representing Southeastern Freight Lines. Hello in Cleveland, Ohio, in North Carolina, in Hudson Valley, New York. So thanks so much. And we're going to get started with our content in a few moments. One other prep note, we are recording today's event. So the event will be available if you would like to share it with others in your organization. And we also will send some follow-up materials to you after today's event. In the event that you would like to live tweet during today's event to share your learning with others, you can use the hashtag Augmented Intelligence. So welcome, wow, more international folks. Welcome in Fairfax, Virginia in the Netherlands. Welcome to Joseph, who's representing, I'm not sure how to say that, Cato. I'm not gonna get there on saying that company name. Welcome from Coaching Lab Academy. Welcome in London, England, and Chicago. Lisa is from CrowdSmart in San Francisco, and Bill is joining from AI Redefined in San Diego. And let's see, Jared calling in from Nielsen in Texas. Wow, amazing group. And I'm so thrilled that you've chosen to join with us today. So we will formally begin. This webinar is on the topic of augmented intelligence, the business power of human-machine collaboration. And Judith Hurwitz and Dan Kirsch are two of the authors on a book with the same title. And I'll take a moment to introduce you to them. Judith is a technology consultant, an analyst, an author, and a thought leader. As president of research and she's the president of a research and consulting firm, Hurwitz and Associates. Judith's work has focused on emerging technology, including cloud computing, big data, software development, computing management, and security. And she's also a technology strategist, thought leader, speaker, and author. So Dan is a consultant, analyst, and thought leader focused on how emerging technologies such as AI, machine learning, and advanced analytics are impacting businesses. And Dan is particularly interested in how these emerging technologies impact businesses' approach to information security, governance, risk, and ethics. Dan has developed Hurwitz and Associates security audit and assessment tools that assist customers to determine where they are in achieving compliance and also practical steps they can take to achieve compliance. So really quickly before we dive in, I want to welcome our callers in the Netherlands and the Ukraine who shouted themselves out while I was sharing bio. So welcome, Judith and Dan. We want to start today by getting your feedback on a poll to understand where you are in your organization with AI. So we would love for you to take a moment to answer. Does your company's leadership understand the business value of AI? So possibly, yes, our company believes in it and can reinvent itself with AI. Yes, but we are moving slowly. Maybe expectations for AI seem too high within our company. No, we use offerings like robotic process automation, but AI that is built into packaged apps, or no, AI is not on our roadmap. So I'm curious if you have any predictions, Dan or Judith, and we don't want to influence the poll, of course. So we'll give folks a few more minutes to answer this question.
So my guess is that it's going to be sort of all over the place. I think, my expectation is that there's a lot of confusion about exactly where AI is going to fit, especially that business leaders don't always understand what AI is. Is it a tool that developers want to play around with, or will it really have an impact on business? So I think that we're not there yet. I think we're still early in this journey.
Well,
Yeah,
let's
and I
take a
think I think also there's a lot of AI built into packaged applications. So nearly every company uses Salesforce, and there's AI and machine learning built into that platform to help you identify good targets and leads and things like that.
Well, let's take a look at these results. It looks like no, AI is not on our roadmap. It's about a third of the respondents, but you're right. We are a little bit all over the map. 30% of people said yes, but we're moving slowly. 18% said yes, our company believes it can reinvent itself with AI. So thanks for participating with us. I'm getting the question, how many people voted? You can see the number of votes next to the percentages on the poll. So thanks again for participating in the poll. And you mentioned, Judith, that you think there's a lot of confusion about these topics. So let's start out today by aligning on some basic definitions. Can you define and share the differences between artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence?
Yeah. So artificial intelligence is sort of the broad category of how you use data to both look for patterns and anomalies and provide a way to have a system and data learn from how that data is being processed, within an application or within a model. So and when you talk about augmented intelligence, what you're talking about is using AI models that can be used to not just create a model and come up with an answer, but to use AI in a way that supports human decision making. So I'll give you an example. Let's They're sort of, you can make a distinction between weak and strong augmentation. So weak augmentation is where you really have a good understanding of the fundamentals. So let's say that you're using AI to predict behavior of a network. While there may be a lot of different ways that a network behaves, and there are anomalies, there are patterns, but you can use all of those patterns, anomalies, and approaches to that data, and you can bring all of that together, and it's fairly predictable. So that's weak augmentation. On the other hand, with strong augmentation, it means that you've got a lot of data, and you can use some of that data to predict things. So there are many approaches. For example, you can use AI to read an X-ray, because there are not, a gazillion ways to read an X-ray. You can look in an X-ray and say, okay, I see an anomaly in a lung, and that would be part of the solution. But you would not expect your AI system to look at that X-ray, see that there's an anomaly, and then say, I see that anomaly, and now I'm going to make a diagnosis from the anomalies I see in that X-ray. What you would do is you would combine that information that was predictable through AI, and now combine it with a lot of information that you know about that specific patient, what other conditions they have. A lot of that may be within a system where you've actually created a corpus of data to begin to understand how you can map the understanding you have the data with human knowledge, some of that knowledge will in fact be incorporated into an AI-based system, but it's actually impossible to have the ability to simply put all your data into a system, all the data, all the context for let's say a disease, and be able to automatically come with a diagnosis and a treatment. Maybe in 100 years we'll be there, but we're certainly not there today.
That's a helpful distinction. Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think Judith covered it. I mean, I think part of the difference, Judith covered it with the X-ray example. Another example that we talk about in the book is with mortgages, for instance, and accounting firms. So, there was a time where accountants would pull out maybe 5% or 1% of mortgages and look at them for mortgage-backed securities, and they had certain assumptions like that property prices could never go down. Obviously, in 2008, we learned that those assumptions weren't correct. And so bringing AI, you could just have a artificial intelligence system go through all the mortgages, look at basically using a database like Zillow and check it on its own. And that's one approach, and it would be fully automated. It would be fast, but you have no human intervention, and you're just trusting that the algorithm's going to be correct. On the other hand, with augmented intelligence, you would have the AI system look at every single mortgage, which is a transformational difference than what was done 10 years ago. And then the mortgages that look, the abnormalities would be pulled by the system for the auditors to look at. And so that then they would use their skills to say, yeah, these look fine, or it does look like there's a problem. Let's look at more of these financial instruments and see if we can bless the security or not. So it's the humans working with the AI system rather than just automating everything and hoping that the AI system can just do everything for you.
So it sounds like the important part is knowing where the human intelligence becomes important and setting up the systems to be able to save the time of the humans who are involved in the process.
Yeah, and also the realization that we are very far away from architecting computer systems to think like people. I mean, there's just connections that humans can make that a computer can never make. There's certain things that computers are great at. I mean, it can ingest tons and tons of data very quickly, retain that information forever. However, there's just, as Judith was saying with the X-ray, there's certain things that a skilled doctor will say, in my experience, I'm seeing this emerge in this community of a higher rate of this type of cancer or this ailment, and it might not be documented, but through human intelligence that they're seeing it, and they can add that that level of intelligence.
Thank you, Dan. So let's talk about the future of work. Is augmented intelligence the future of work?
So I would say yes, it is the future of work. What is wonderful about the human brain is that humans can see a tiny piece of information that isn't a massive amount of information, but they'll get a clue. I'll give a silly example. You're walking down the street and there's a tree and a leaf falls off the tree. Now, it turns out that it's in fact the middle of summer. And the fact that all these leaves are falling off that tree actually is a sign that there's something wrong with that tree. Now, that's a relatively simple example, but it's the idea that, seeing a leaf fall off a tree, that it's the middle of summer, you can make those inferences and those connections, even though you don't have a ton of information. So humans have that ability to take small elements of data, of information, and apply it to a broader set of issues. That's what makes a human brain such an incredibly powerful mechanism. So no, we're not going to replace humans with computers. What we will see is being able to make great use of data and being able to process data, learn from data, quickly determine where something is out of context or doesn't seem right, and then use that to apply it to making better informed decisions, because we have the ability to process petabytes of information. Probably 40, 50 years ago, before the advent of cloud computing, cloud storage, faster processors, what companies would have to do is they would have to go and grab subsets of data and then hope that they had selected the right data to make decisions. And sometimes there would be an occasional anomaly that would suddenly appear, but if you hadn't selected the right data, you wouldn't know. Or you see an anomaly in that data set and would look at that and say, oh, well, that's, somebody made a mistake, so I'm going to discount this. This gives you the ability to make so much better decisions, because you know the difference between something that is a mistake and something that is starting to appear, so you're in a better position to make predictions. And that's really how computers and humans can interact and collaborate to dramatically improve decision making.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to think about augmented intelligence and AI and sort of the future of work. Is that augmented intelligence gives junior folks in a company, allows them to do the work that used to be done by people with 5-6 years of experience. So if you look in IT operations, for example, there's certain people with doing tasks that are very manual. So you might be just checking that systems are running correctly, or moving traffic from one system to another, or helping to reboot systems. And much of that can just be automated. I mean, those are just routine tasks that a system can identify the problem, fix it, and if you still want a human in the loop, you could have the solution presented to the person and they can click yes or no. But those type of activities can be automated, so then the more junior folks can do more strategic work that actually impacts the business. The same as in, there's tons and tons of IT security job openings, and that will never be filled. So automation and AI and machine learning are all sort of helping to fill that gap, where there's a mismatch of open jobs and skilled employees.
So we had an attendee comment, looking back, we see the progression from handwritten to typewriters to word processors. It seems like this is the next stage of development in freeing us to do higher level work, which is really what you just said, Dan, that computer learning can cut out some of that entry level work and allow people to show up at work in more strategic
It's even a
ways.
silly example, but with Gmail and in LinkedIn now, if someone asks you a simple question, there's pre-populated answers where you can just say, yes, thanks for reaching out. And I don't need to write that. It's, but if I want to write something thoughtful, then I need to do it. But sure, let's just automate that and I'll save the, minute of writing that email.
Yes, agreed. So are there some specific skills that humans need to learn or develop in order to implement augmented intelligence more effectively in their organizations?
Yeah, so it, in order to do this really requires teamwork. So we see sort of the evolution of hybrid teams and what we call hybrid professionals. So there have been many organizations that have made the mistake of saying, "Oh, we've got to do AI. It's a big trend. Everyone's doing it. We don't want to be left behind." So they'll, actually, they have one organization that went out and hired 5 high-level data scientists, paid them huge amounts of money each, brought them into the organization, gave them their own workspace, didn't want to interfere with them. They didn't know what the hell these guys were doing anyway. And came back in a few months and said, "Okay, so have you developed something?" And they said, "Well, we've been discussing this among ourselves, and we think we have found the right algorithm that we're going to use." So after all of these months, they first of all, they had never talked to any of the people in the organization that understood business processes. They had not talked to people in IT who knew the data that the company used on a day-to-day basis, and they were working in isolation from the programmers and the entire organization. So it's no wonder that they were struggling to come up with an approach. So in order to be successful, you have to include people who understand the business strategy. If you just say we're going to do AI, to what end? What is the business problem you're trying to solve? So it has to start by having people who understand the business and the strategy. What are the business processes? How well are they working? Do you need different business processes in place to transform your business as new, so if you're in financial services and now there are fintech companies coming along that are upending the way you've done business for 100 years. Is that what your goals are? Then you need people who really understand this is the data we actually have. What are the areas where we're lacking data? What do we know about customers? And so you need all of these people to come together, as well as the people who do know data science, do know how to create effective models, do understand how data needs to be clean and well constructed. In addition to that, you need, I think talking about the future of work is the emergence of people, this hybrid professional who has enough understanding of data scientists, data overall in the corporation, and business strategy to provide leadership. So I think that there'll be some interesting new positions that will emerge that will be transformative.
Yeah, I think this hybrid professional is going to be a very hot and emerging field and a skill set for people. That's people with soft skills, MBAs, who really, they don't need to understand, am I going to use k-means or a different type of clustering algorithm? I mean, that they don't need to know, but matching what's possible with what is realistic. So a lot of companies will read, here our competitors are doing very interesting things with AI or machine learning, but a big problem is a lot of companies, have massive amounts of data, but it's a mess. It's not organized. They don't know how accurate it is. So these hybrid professionals, I think, are going to be the ones who can help bridge the gap between the data scientists and those focused on solely on the business, and explain, what's needed to prepare for AI, and what the business needs to do to sort of set the foundation so that the data scientists have the right tools to be successful.
So I have a question in the chat about how people might deal with fear related to the future of work being outside of their individual gifts or capabilities.
So I think that one of the areas of future of work is that we all have to be perpetual learners, and I think that's one of the way that you deal fear is to really, allow people to make mistakes, allow people to change their job, add to their capabilities, even when it's outside of their comfort zone. So I think that that if we allow people to, it takes strong leadership to recognize that everyone is capable of learning and growing, and I think that that's why we get around, stay in your job, do your job, and don't worry, because the world that we're in is constantly changing, and there's always been the fear of the unknown, whether we're talking about the Middle Ages or yesterday. It's the fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, is always been with us, and it probably always will be.
And I think also a lot of this new technology in the future of work can help people focus on what makes them unique. So, if you take a salesman who's just wonderful at, grabbing drinks with a prospect, or, getting dinner, merging that with AI, they can really focus on prospects that have a high likelihood of becoming clients. So it can help sort of tune people into to focus their efforts on the things that are going to deliver the most value.
Yeah, I've never gotten an email from somebody who thinks I'm a hot prospect in an area where I don't even know what they're talking about.
So it's the computers who are helping identify you as such.
Right.
So what training might be required for people who are interested in this area in their organizations of the hybrid professionals that you referenced?
Yeah. So I think, right now, I don't see that there are curriculums or courses in areas like this. So I think, the opportunity is for self-starters who can learn something about data management, learn something about what is the data that exists within my organization. Typically, and one of the biggest problems is data is not centralized. Within each business unit, they have their own packaged applications, their own systems of record, that don't necessarily connect with a different department's data. So understanding what is the data that really is important to the way we do business with customers, suppliers, partners, and employees. So beginning to get a handle on what's the data that we have, and then what are we not able to do with data within our organization. So, that's some exploration and learning. The other thing to do is to, many organizations will have, strategy sessions with, the CEO, where they'll give an address to employees about, this is our strategy, this is where we're going. And it's important to pay attention to that, so that people really understand what the, what are the directions. And don't just, I think a lot of people will assume, well, I'm a manager, but I have nothing to do with corporate strategy. But when, often somebody not at the top of the organization, but in the middle somewhere, really can get an understanding of to see things that just don't seem right. And how come A doesn't talk to B, doesn't talk to C? And well, it's because I'm junior and I don't really know. Well, often people in those organizations see things that upper management may miss. So it's really beginning to, connect the dots. Take an online course on understanding artificial intelligence. There's so many online courses and so much material out there. So it's a matter of starting by educating yourself until there's a true identification of this hybrid role.
I think it's also two ways. I mean, it's important for data scientists to ask questions and to understand the business strategy. So rather than a lot of their time is focused obviously on data and preparing data, on serving up various insights. But if they ask questions like, what's what are you trying to learn from, you want information on X, Y, and Z. What are you trying to learn from that? They might be able to then offer a better dashboard or more useful insights rather than just giving exactly what the business is asking for. So I think it's important for the data scientists to understand the business objectives more and more.
So Dan, there's a very thoughtful question related to this idea of hybrid professional that came to us as panelists in the chat. I don't know if you'd want me to read that and see if we can dive into it.
Yeah,
Robert, sure. Robert mentions we already have some examples of companies using hybrid professionals. So Boehringer Ingelheim has broken its IT group into horizontal SWAT teams to focus on drug discovery. It mixes data scientists, data engineers, statisticians, drug developers, and statisticians. But it is unclear whether there is any hybrid professional emerging from this type of structure. There's interesting fast work being done to get insights into how to test drugs for Alzheimer's, which were not done previously. So he sees lots of data in this type of group, but not the emergence of a hybrid professional, except for people in a more managerial role. So he's wondering what is the route to that
yeah. I mean,
hybrid professional.
I don't think when we look at a hybrid professional, it's not someone who's going to be able to do everything. I mean, it's just too much for one person to know the business, to know data science, to know data engineering. It's more that each person in the chain or in the whatever you want to call the data circle. Each person has to understand what the other people in the group are doing, and so we see it in the area of DevOps. So with application development, DevOps and DevSecOps, which is combining development, security, and operations, is a hot subject. But there isn't one person who knows all of development, all of operations, and all of security. Instead, it's making each person along the value chain knowledgeable about what other people are doing. So in this example, the scientists would want to know, what are the data engineers interested in? What are the statisticians interested in? And the same thing is what the statisticians need to understand, what are the data engineers looking at? What kinds of data sources are they picking up? So it's more about working together and understanding what the other groups are doing than someone who can do everything, because that's not realistic.
So what I'd add into that is in a sense, it is a managerial role. In many organizations, there are a group of, sometimes they'll call them internal consultants. These are people who have a role to, they aren't necessarily an expert in every aspect of the business they're looking at, but they know enough about each area, or they can learn enough as they enter a new area to provide. I mean, what they're providing is sort of the glue that so that all of the participants in that goal have enough of an understanding of what everyone else is doing to make better informed decisions.
That's helpful. So why might business leaders be hesitant to use machine learning in conjunction with human intelligence? What are some of the possible risks?
So I think when I mentioned the AI being used for X-rays is a great example. So there are certain things that you can use machine learning to do very comfortably. Dan mentioned in some of the IT operations, it's comfortable to use AI and machine learning. There are other areas where you don't necessarily want an AI model to be deciding which type of surgery you should be having for your ailment, and then go ahead and do that without any human oversight by a doctor who says, Yes, in some situations that would be the right answer, but I see that there are certain extenuating circumstances. There's another disease, so it's, what's interesting about human decision making is that if you were to try to take all the data in the world about a certain subject matter and put it into a system and understand the context of how all that data was interrelated, you would never be done. It would be the most massive data that anyone on the planet has ever seen. So the idea that you can take all human knowledge and data, put it into a model and have it take care of everything is a misnomer. And that's so I think that the people who really understand the complexities of certain areas are not necessarily going to trust a model to make those sort of decisions. That's when we talk about weak versus strong augmentation.
And also, I mean, there's some big major hurdles around security, privacy, governance, compliance, and ethics are all sort of big major worries. If you have a system making decisions, there's a lot of ethical concerns about it, in terms of what can you and can't you do, and making sure that there's certain ways of, for instance, let's say you have a mortgage approval, an AI driven mortgage approval application. Of course, race, ethnicity, country of origin, those things aren't going to be, programmed into your algorithm, hopefully. But there's other sort of backdoor ways that those sort of elements can sneak into it, your algorithm, and you want to make sure that doesn't happen. Or take, for example, many companies use AI as the first way of screening potential employees. If you get 1,000 applicants for 5 jobs, you need some way of sorting that out. And historically, you might have, the most successful employees might come from 6 colleges, or they might all have gone to a certain prep school. All of a sudden, if you're just modeling the new employees like your old employees, you're obviously taking out all sorts of benefits from having a diverse workforce. You're sort of getting clones into your organization. So you need to think about your AI system, and then with security, governance, and compliance, you need to think about the types of data that are in your system, how you're protecting that data, where the data is. So are you can't just send customer data out to the cloud in an unprotected way. So there's a lot of considerations around those big hurdles, I would say.
So what I'd like to add into that is the whole area of explainability, which is an area that's emerging. And what we mean by explainability is, so you have models and you're using it to make, not strong augmented intelligence decisions, but you're using it for decision making. And now management has to be able to justify decisions that are being made. So if these models are difficult to detect by somebody other than a data scientist, management has to be able to explain, let's say, to the audit committee, why did you make certain decisions and what was it based on? If you can't, if there's not a way to really understand those models and to be able to explain decisions, it's going to really thwart your ability to effectively use AI. And that's, a lot of the models are very cryptic, especially if you're using things like neural networks, which are very powerful, but it's actually very difficult to be able to look at them and be able to see exactly what's going on. one of the powers of something like decision trees is you can look at a decision tree and you can understand, okay, it does A, B, and C, and it's pretty easy to understand. It's not the same as you get into more complex models. And that's something that really has to be solved. And there's a lot of research going on in this area, but we're a long way from really being able to determine explainability. And then you have the whole area of AI ethics that Dan mentioned, being able to make sure that you're making ethical decisions based on the AI models that you're using.
Yeah, so for explainability, right now, data scientists can sort of look at the different features of a data set, and they can basically reverse engineer a decision. So they can say, we think age contributes to the decision between 10 and 15%, and this other element of the data contributes, 8 to 12% to the final decision. But they don't actually, so with something like a neural net, a data scientist doesn't know exactly how the system is coming to its decision. So there isn't a way where you could get in front of a courtroom or be in a board meeting and explain exactly how you came to that decision.
Well, and we did have a question in the chat about it, but I think that your remarks, Dan and Judith, did answer the question. But to the poster who asked about neural networks, if you have a follow-up, please feel free to post it. So I was hoping that we could talk now a little bit more about how augmented intelligence optimizes the decision-making process. Can you expand more on that?
So I think if you look at augmented intelligence in context with business process, typically when you see discussions about AI, is not always linked directly to business process, but that's one of the most important areas, especially as you look at business transformation, where companies have to find new ways to execute on decision making, new ways to approach customers, to make their experience much more dynamic, especially as a competitor finds a new ways to execute on a process. So that's probably one of the greatest ways that we will begin to see AI have a tremendous impact on organizational transformations.
Dan, do you have anything to add there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I just wanted to address when we were talking about hurdles. Just going back, I saw Robert Peters asked a question about common languages and taxonomy. So that is, a major challenge where every if you have a big company or even a small company, every spreadsheet, every database, your columns are likely going to have different titles. So does name mean the company? Does it mean the first name of a customer, the last name of a customer? Does it mean the product that they're buying? So those type of it seems like a trivial problem, but even those type of situations are difficult stumbling blocks, and that's where sort of these, as Judith was mentioning, internal consultants and hybrid professionals, that's where they can really help sort of smooth things out across groups. And even not only the databases and spreadsheets, but even one team within a business might call customers clients, and another team might call them customers. And even just that vernacular difference can cause issues.
Thanks. I want to go back to a question that was in the chat earlier in the hour from William. He said, evolved thinking suggests that optimized augmented intelligence pairs humans and machines both in the AI learning stage, as well as upstream in the workflow decision phases. What specific current and future use cases utilize this synergistic approach and will have the greatest impact?
Dan, you wanna start that?
I'm just looking. There was a lot there, but some of the biggest use cases are, I think, are some of the ones that we've discussed. So there's a lot of use cases in healthcare where you're not going to just automate everything. There's a lot of use cases in things in operations. I see a ton in security, where obviously IT security is extremely important. What company hasn't been hacked? Um, but you can't hire a million security professionals. So you absolutely need automation and AI along with skilled professionals. Uh,
And one way that's gotten a lot of attention and will continue is the whole area of AI operations. So using AI for operations, especially in a hybrid computing environment where you have some systems on premises, you've got 3 or 4 public clouds, you've got some software as a service applications, you have some hosted services. So if you look at all of those together, being able to use AI to understand not just what's happening at one point in time, but then how it's evolving, how the services that you're using are very dynamic. So something like AI operations is going to have a big, impact on the future of augmented intelligence.
yeah, and some of the common traits with the use cases is there needs to be a lot of data, and there also oftentimes the new input isn't very defined. So with a lot of chatbots, for instance, they're really programmatic. They're not AI. I mean, there's only so many questions you can ask. What are your hours? What are your prices? How do I buy? Where are your locations? Whereas with, let's take the case of Stitch Fix. They use augmented intelligence where they have a system that will predict the clothing that someone will want, and the system learns what the person likes, but they also pair customers with a not sure what you would call them, like uh, someone to sell them the clothing, but an individual to sort of tailor the suggestions to them. So they would say, "Oh, I know you don't like blue. Like, I'm not even going to suggest that shirt to you." It's there's a lot of data, but you have an individual who has their own wants and needs, and it's going to be sort of undefined what that person wants.
And it can change from day to day.
Exactly, and with operations, it's the same thing. I mean, a system can go down, but it could be for a myriad of reasons, and so the system can sort of predict. It could be one of these 3 reasons, and then the person can intervene and say, "All right, well, I've seen this 6 times. I know it's because we're doing an update, and there's a high load on that system or whatever."
So we have a comment from Robert, and he says, Dan almost seems to be arguing that hybrid professionals that would be a part of a matrix structure in a firm. They would connect with each other and exchange critical knowledge as needed. This is something that Spotify is doing with its team structure and the there's a big word for me, connectors that help teams collaborate when needed. And he says, thanks for the stimulating conversation. Any comments back there, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hybrid professional, it sort of depends what the strategy that a company is going to take. So it could be this cross group type person that touches on multiple parts of the business, or it could be people, sort of deep in the weeds that start to learn the other skill sets. So one example of somebody not really in a matrix organization that we talked to for the book was a law school professor, and so at this law school they teach a data science class, and the purpose for it is to help law firms if they take a contingent case, like a massive multi-million-dollar case. It could be 3, 5, 10 years until they get paid. So you need to be very careful with the cases that you're taking, and AI can help determine whether this is going to be a winner or not. And so to have a lawyer who also has these data chops is a valuable person who's part of your team.
That's an interesting example, Dan. Thank you. So we want to make sure that we let you know about some different ways that you can stay in touch with Judith Hurwitz and Dan Kirsch, and with Hurwitz and Associates, and some other ways that you can get involved or learn more. So first, there's the book, Augmented Intelligence, The Business Power of Human-Machine Collaboration, which you can get on Amazon, and we've put the links in the chat. If you've already read and benefited from the book, we would encourage you, please, to leave an Amazon review. Amazon reviews are important social proof that help the book get to more readers. We also would invite you to go to hurwitz.com to learn more about the work that Judith, Dan, and their organization are doing. You can download a sample chapter of the book by visiting hurwitz.com. So incidentally, Amazon reviews are important partly because of Amazon's algorithms and the machine intelligence that helps to serve up books to readers at the proper time. So we as humans, when we leave an Amazon review, have the opportunity to impact that algorithm and be able to expand awareness on that. And finally, if you're interested in discussing your AI strategy, whether you're a business leader or a vendor, you are welcome to contact Judith directly, and her email address is here. I did have a late question that just came in that I'm going to ask because we do happen to have a couple of minutes. And this is related to AI and waste separation. So is there any experience that you have on the subject that you could tell about? Any input on AI and waste separation, maybe related to recycling, I'm thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, I don't have any experience. It's a really interesting use case because you'd use, there's technology that, that translates images into a form that a computer can recognize. Obviously, that's fundamental for autonomous driving, and so and also for manufacturing, quality control uses those type of that type of technology. So that is very interesting because the way augmented intelligence would work for something like that is you'd also have a human who's working alongside the system, helping to train it and helping to identify. I would imagine the system would come shipped, knowing what a glass bottle looks like and what a variety of things looks like, and then you could improve the algorithm by helping to correct it.
Thanks. So Judith, any closing comments from you?
So I think what I'd like to leave you with is the idea that AI is very powerful. It's going to be with us for a long time. I think the real challenge is to really understand, the difference between simply going with the hot new technology and assuming that it will do everything for you without any human intervention, and understanding how to harness the power of AI to really support the power of human collaboration.
Thank you. Thanks for joining today.
Thanks, everyone.